Greetings, technology enthusiasts. I am Chandrahas and I am delighted to be here with you representing CyberBrainer. Do you not believe that the technology sector is advancing at an unprecedented rate, making this an opportune moment to acquire the skills that will facilitate your progress? With CyberBrainer, we are empowering you to take control of your own future. At CyberBrainer, we do not merely impart your interests. We assert that information is power, yet it is the application of knowledge that distinguishes you. Our courses are meant to equip you with essential skills, whether you are pursuing data science, understanding artificial intelligence, or delving into cybersecurity. Let us commence the session and seize the future today. Thank you.
What are the different type of which group of people normally we call under a salary plan, which group of people mainly come under salary plan, or the full-time employees, correct? There are various types of plans like salary plan, early plan. Let's look into like how we normally create salary plans. For example, the task will be simple, right? Whenever you want to create anything, you have to use the prefix word create. Like for example, you want to create salary plan. You will use it, create salary plan. You want to create allowance plan. You will create allowance plan. If you want to create merit plan, you'll use the word create merit plan. In case you want to make any changes in the existing plan and that scenario, you will use the edit option like edit salary plan, edit allowance plan. I just want to think the salary plan. If you just only want to view the plan, you can just use the word view. These are the various prefix word that is mainly used. If in case you are trying to use create, edit or view, you are not getting the option, it's better. Just type in whatever you want to do, like for example salary plan. You will get the option, like here you can see create salary plan, edit salary plan. This is the other options that you have. Let's talk about salary plan. Again, there is an effective date. Talking about the salary plan normally that we are going to create. Since when it is going to be effective? Normally what we do is, as per the standard practice, we keep the date size of 11/99/100. This is the standard date that we use. This date is not specific for all the scenarios. And usually in my organization also, we use the typical date because of all the to run the history of the plans. Correct. The reason being, let's take an example for salary plan, right? Salary plan is something common, right? Which we use, right? This is not something which I'm introducing in mid of something, right? The reason why we create or why we use this date is, let's take an example of some workers, right? Like I want to track the history of the workers as well. Like someone who joined my company 10 years back, right? I would have some data related to that. That is one of the reasons why we keep the date as the oldest date, which is nothing but LN9900. That's the standard practice, mainly that we use in work. Talking about here, we have to mention the name of the plan, right? Depending upon whatever salary plan name that we want to use. Like for example, let's take an example. I'm just giving my name initial like Raj, salary plan. Because I can give any name as per my convenience. I'm just using the name initials. You can ignore this because this is a practice tenant. I want to search my plan. Just for that reference purpose, I'm using this. Usually we do it like plan name can be like India salary plan or Albi plan. In case we want to give a description again related to this plan, you can just add on some description. Here you have FT, full-time employment, like how you want to evaluate the full-time employment percentage. Apply FT percentage. If you talk about this, apply FT percentage. This is calculated depending upon. Let me open the pad. Talking about FT percentage, there is a calculation. Let's take an example. Total number of weekly hours that any worker is eligible to work. Let's take an example of it. With respect to by default weekly hours, like for different countries, there are different weekly hours. For example, for United States it's 40, for India it's 40. For other countries it's 38 hours, it depends. This FT percentage is calculated upon like whatever the default weekly hours that we have for that specific country. Within that whatever percentage, let's take an example. If we talk about part-time workers, right? They normally works in US. It's around 20 hours like 0.550. There are some workers who mainly work 10 hours in a week or hour, like an intern or working student. It is common. Normally you can use this. Use assigned value. After that, we have this option. If in case we do not want to use this, use assigned value in 100% calculation. This is going to calculate. Each and everyone has like a 100% FT. If in case you don't want to consider any of those, it is going to be none of the above. Like whichever worker will become eligible for this plan, they will be 100% FT. That is the another thing that you can. After that, here we have competition element. Normally here we use base pay. Any idea like why we like normally? Yesterday also when I was creating that, I was mentioning about base pay. Why I'm not using anything else? Because base pay is the net component of the total target composition. Correct. That is the reason why I'm using base pay. Because the rest comes under the allowances and prerequisites. It is not considered. Correct. After that, here we have eligibility rules. This is important. This is not mandatory. Let's take an example. There is a company who have only full-time liability. They do not have any contractors or any hourly workers or anything. In that scenario, they can go with. There is no need of eligibility rule to be defined here. Or else, but in ideal scenario or in real-time scenario, there are different group of workers that is available like salaried hourly. In that scenario, we have to define here like eligibility criteria. Mainly talking about the eligibility criteria that we have to create. Here, we will again use the same task for creating the eligibility rules which we used yesterday. Like for example, create eligibility rule. We will always go with the compensation eligibility rule because this is related to compensation. Let's take an example. We can pull that in. That's right. That's right. That's right. Employee. I can define you. First of all, I'll define the country. First of all, I'll define the country. First real-time scenario, like whichever group of workers the client want to make under full-time. for example, if I talk about your company, right? Like, what is the criteria that they have for full-time workers? If there are multiple countries, like if in case there are multiple countries, obviously one of the criteria that you have to define is add one-on-one, right? If there are multiple countries, you just ask to use the plus symbol and you can add multiple countries. Alright, correct? We can add multiple countries at the same time. But like for different companies, we can use different salary plan. That's how mainly ideally we segregate, that we don't mix up things. Normally in real-time scenarios, we segregate it country-wise. What? There can be some other criteria, like for example, if I can tell you like worker type. There are two types of worker type, full-time and part-time. I can define it worker type. This is worker returns the applicable worker sub del. Normally, whatever field we are using just to create a function, we can create a function, but if we have to cross with it, we have to check whether we are guiding the right set of fields or not. By type, here I will have multiple options. Like for example, with an employee type, there are many. I can choose from here, but this is giving me the subtype of the worker, right? If in case we want to check anything else, like exactly what worker type you are looking, we have other options to get into the insights. Let me open this worker. We can use this employee type. There are different fields that we can use from here, or FD percentage we can use. There are different criteria that we can use, and we can add on here and we can use the check. I can use this for the time here. I can click this. That shows an error. Because I used this relation operator of the previous one, that's why it gave me an error. I will use the one any in the selection list. I can use this as in the salary plan. After that, there is another component that we have here, exclude from merit. Let's take an example. If we do not want to use this salary plan and the merit process, then I can use this checkbox. Exclude from merit. Technically, it will not compute even the future calculations of the merit percentage of the salary. Right. Normally, we will not do that because this will be considered the merit process. We will ignore that. Normally, talking about this occurs in some respective scenarios. Let's take an example. When an employer has more than one salary plan, and only that workers should receive only one plan in the merit. And that's an area we can exclude one of the merit plan. If in case any worker is eligible for multiple, this was related to the salary plan. This is how normally it is created. I will let you know in the last like how all these things gets linked with each other. Because linking is very important. Apart from that, there is another type of salary plan that is available named as unit salary plan. What if you start with unit salary? Unit salary. Any idea about this? Let's take an example. In the company, there are different types of workers where the salary is defined based on number of units of the work delivered. It's more like in the manufacturing industry, correct? Let's take an example. They are paid depending upon number of goods they make. For each good they are being paid. I experienced this in my manufacturing company where they pay separately for the blue-collared employees and the white-collared employees. White-collared are like non-factory but not targeted. Similarly, you can mention here which you rate salary plan. Here compensation element. You can choose anything, right? Depending upon whatever you want to have here, I'll set a base pair. Let's set it base pair. This is the unit. Here you have to define the unit like in which unit you want to measure. Just to give you an example, there will be various different type of unit which is available. Like for example, you want to consider in terms of if it is related to land, it will be in a code. If it's related to book, bottle, box, card, case, right? It doesn't. In whichever unit you want to measure, like for example, let's take an example. It's a food delivery business, right? And you want to, the sales are completely based on the food packet, right? Or not, like a supermarket, what you do. If at all, it's like a pay or compensation plan for a supermarket. Say like we have, let's take a Reliance or Big Buzzer as a thing. And if you wanted to put a compensation plan for the workers who are doing the cash counters, right? Or doing and who are taking care of the big, what to say, Big Buzzer supermarkets. How you will typically use 2-unit plan for them. Normally it depends, like normally for those type of workers are mainly on an hourly basis. But if in case you want to do like for each payment or each billing, that happens, right? We have an option of each. We can use that. And apart from that, if in case there is let me just give you 1 minute, please. Thank you. All right. Sorry, yes, no problem. Normally, those type of workers have worked for one of the retail client. Normally, they pay in terms of hourly basis. But talking about the workers who work in the warehouses, right? For them, it goes talking about the each, like for example, someone is in the packaging division, right? Talking about they get paid for each package that they are doing or for each dozen of package that they are doing. It comes under that. Let's take an example. If we are talking about for each dozen, right, we have to define like what is the per unit amount that they will be getting for like 1 dozen of packaging that they do. Let's take an example. I want to define it as dinar. We have to define here the currency. Here the 4 units. There is a defined limit that they have like minimum. What is the expected number of units that the worker is supposed to do? And that is the base that they have to do. If they are doing above that, they will get paid extra, right? But let's take an example. They are supposed to do 10 units means 10 dozens. That is the by default amount that they have to do. If they are doing above that, well and good. It's up to that. Talking about the frequency, it has to be annual. This is related to the number of units. Let's take an example. Here I'm talking about daily basis, right? Here it will come under that. But again, in other words, this doesn't can be something related to something else. In that scenario, this frequency will change. Let's take an example. I'm considering this for a salesperson, right? For salesperson, I can select some other unit like depending upon the number of books that they sell. If that is related to book or if there is anything related to all this, they can choose that. But there is another option. Like for example, 1 second. Do we have something called target? For target, we can mention it in terms of the thousands as well. Like for every 1,000 of revenue, what is the amount that they are going to get? It can be set up in that way as well. For example, I'm having also say my organization is having 50 full-time employees and 20 part-time employees, totally a head count of 70. In that we have 2 members as a part-time employee working under sales and 10 members of the full-time employees out of the 50 proportion is from the sales team. For them alone, I can create a salary plan for the sales team business unit alone. Right? Correct? And for the rest, they can be a full-time, other plan. And for them, this ideally, I will say like it will be more efficient, even though they're full-time or part-time. Although it is like mentioned as annual hourly rates, I still see that we can make this more enhanced during the allowances plan, like sales incentives or any target incentive plans or structural allowances plan. Correct? This is something which we have to define. No override. No override. Meaning here is if in case I use this checkbox later on, if I want to make any changes within this amount, right? Manually at the later stage without making. Let's take an example. One worker did a really great job and I want to pay him $2 extra for the per unit amount. Right. I cannot do that. I have chosen the option of no override. If in case this no override is not checked up, right, in that scenario I can make manual changes for that specific worker. It depends upon the company, like in which way they want to segregate. Talking about your question right now, you mentioned like in your company you have 50 full-time. There are 20 part-time, right? Out of 50, there are 10 full-time workers who are towards the same side and you want to consider them in this unit. And also how you will create the eligibility rule. Can you tell me any idea that you can have? Like if I want to segregate those 10 workers, like what is one of the easiest way by which I can segregate them? Working hours. One thing that will be common for them. One thing will be FTE, where they will be easy to segregate based on the working hours. They do working hours, their salary employees will be full. Let's take an example. You mentioned there are 50 workers who are full-time. Out of those 50 workers, 10 are into the sales side, and those 10 people who are in sales sites, you want to segregate them. How you will do that? By department. It will be either by department. That is one. Another thing is job profile. Job profile is the easiest way. You mentioned sales, right? In sales department, there might be a sales manager. There might be a sales head, right? He will also fall under the same department. Apart from that, like if there is one specific organization, let's take an example wherein we have only sales executive for whom I want to have this plan. I can use either that department or else I can use the job profile specific to that. That's how mainly we can create the eligibility rule. Normally here we can select and this randomly showing you like what field we will select. Or be next, should we scroll to our own in place? This is really off of this one. All here, we have job profile here. We have job profile compensation, job profile primary compensation, right? There are multiple work delivered fields. Whenever we have the scenario, we have to keep one thing in mind. We have to always go and check the description. Here I can see this is the calculator. This is someone who has created. I will not use this. Talking about the second, one returns the applicable job profile. This is a work delivered. This is one of the options that I can choose. And this is coming. This is linked with compensation eligibility and other thing is related to job and the position. Let's check the next one. This is again returns the primary job profile. We can use either one of these. It will work. I can use here. I can mention. The job profile. Let's take an example. The sales exhibit. I'm not sure whether sales exhibit. I can use multiple different job profiles. If in case you want to use the department, right? Let's take an example. I want to define the department as well here. I will search for supervisory organization. Are you aware? Like normally the department is known as supervisory organization in Workday. I'm aware. We can use this. I can select the respective department. This is how mainly we create the eligibility rules. Let's see if they have any sales department. I can choose sales and marketing or sales department. That's it. Now, in this eligibility rule, you will see one thing. Everything is and means the worker should be of this department. The worker job profile should be this. The worker should be a full-time. The worker should be of United States. When anyone satisfies all these 4 conditions, then only the worker will become eligible for this unit salary plan. If in case the worker satisfies all 3 conditions, but the worker is not of us, he is of some other country, this will not work. I get that. That's it. On. Let us just look into the allowance plan. Allowance plan is something like which you will use frequently. Let me discuss about the hourly plan first. What did you mention? Hourly plan. Like we had a salary plan. These are for the part-time intern workers. I can't pay for anyone actually who we want to pay on an hourly rate basis. Because in Germany we have a concept called the employees, the full-time employees, when they wanted to go on a parental leave for 3 years. They have a parental leave for 3 years. They have an option to choose there when they are getting like a first-time parent. They have an option to choose getting into a part-time employment rather than a full-time employment. And person who wants to take a sabbatical leave, this is what you'll do. It depends upon scenario to scenario basis and whichever way we want to plan. We can do that. Because this is something very common in across Europe where employees wanted to take a part-time although they joined as a full-time employee, but we wanted to work only like and they have an option to choose how many hours of part-time they wanted to do. Either they work for 6 hours and where they're based on their number of hours they are working. It also auto changes. Otherwise, if they wanted to go for 50-50 or 60-40, it is depending on their wish. We cannot force, it is employees' push. In such cases, how to do that? What did you say? Can you please repeat it again? For example, when I joined as an employee for a 40 hours plan, which is an employee plan, but I have an option based on the governmental legal legislations. I, as an employee of this country, in this country, I have options to go on a part-time employment also. I can deliberately ask my employer saying like, hey, I can only work out of the 8 hours. I can only deliver 5 hours of my work time because I want to opt for a part-time because of and personal reasons. Or it can be like anything like I wanted to. Just I'm wanting to pursue my education and a thing where I wanted like only 60% of my work time. The rest 40% I wanted for my education purpose. There are like multiple options. If people can go on a part-time, in such case, what to do? Like when there is nothing majorly that we have to do, right? You can see the FD percentage is 100%. Let's assume the weekly default hours are 40. Right. I can go to the actions. I can change the full-time percentage to 50 or 60, whatever we want. Normally, we can change the job. There is a field that is available job change. It looks like I do not have the access. Let me show you who is our manager. Normally, I can do the job change and I can decrease her full-time employment percentage. That's it. There is nothing that we have to do. I get that now. Talking about the early plan, we can define here the compensation element as base fee. We can mention the early amount. Normally, in scenarios, the early amount differs. That is not a mandatory fee. We can ignore that. We can keep it blank. We can just mention the currency. Let's take an example for us. We can define here the frequency. Let's take an example here. I will define it in early basis because that is something which I am referring. Minimum wage. If in case I want to define any specific minimum wage, I can use this or else we can ignore. And again, the most important one is eligibility rules. We have to always define the eligibility rules for the various plan that we are creating. The reason being is for this plan, only specific group of people is going to be eligible. We have to make sure like we are having the right set of eligibility rules because one worker should not become eligible for early and salaried plan board or else it will be completed. I get it. This is normally how we create the RD plan. Now coming back to allowance plan. Raja, how can I get a session? Like I know, like the session is recorded. If I wanted to review back the recording session, whom I should reach out because I haven't got yesterday's session recording. I will just ping them after the session that they will share it with you. I think it will be, you already have access to LMS, right? There you will have it. Then I will check. Thank you. There was another when I was briefing you about the unit salary plan, right? You mentioned me like if in case I want to give some additional allowance to any specific worker, right? Depending upon the work and all, right. We can use this various allowances plan that is available. Absolutely. Because here I will tell you what. Because in India it was very different. Here employees, whatever the variable incentives like a short-term incentive, cash compensation or a long-term if they are part of equity plans, that will be applied to the right for every employee. And for sales employees, because of the nature of the job, their variable incentive percentage is divided into two blocks. They will also be eligible for the regular variable incentives based on the company's target ratio and their individual's performance ratio. And also, if, for example, if a normal employee, non-sales employee is getting, say, like a 20% of discretionary variable bonus based on the individual's performance and based on the company's performance. 20% of their base is their variable bonus. But for a sales employee at the same job level, at the same job grade, say like if both these employees are at a L3 level, which is very junior, or like a L1 level, which is very, very low level. Both are like, say, like a finance analyst and a sales special, a space sales analyst. If that is the case, both are in the same job grade and this percentage of variable for the salesperson will be the 20% divided into 2. One is like 10% of the target achievement on sales and 10% of the base in such cases, how you do the allowance plan for them. In that scenario, we create allowance plan separately for both of them. I will not have one allowance plan in that scenario. That's what how you do. That's what my question is. What you wanted to give based on the percentage you mentioned, right? Like 20%, something correct. see if I talk about allowance plan. Alright. First of all, this reimbursable that you see, this is the checkbox. Alright. Mainly, there are many different plans. To give you an example, like car allowances or fuel allowances or internet allowances. Normally, there can be a scenario where you have to, those allowances will be reimbursed, right? You have to submit the bells and everything, and whatever will be the defined limit, like up to a certain limit, the amount will be defined. In that scenario, we can use this reimbursable. Talking about the allowance plan, there are three different types of allowances plan that we can create. One thing is amount based. Amount based means there is a specific amount. Let's take an example for internet allowances. I want to pay $100 per month. Talking about percentage. Here we can define a percentage. Like you will get if you become eligible. Depending upon your salary, you'll be eligible for 10% of your base salary. I feel like most of the time we never use percentage on base plan. That is only applicable for a variable incentives. But when it allowances, let's stick on to the amount based plan itself. Apart from that, here we have unit based plan, like what we did for the unit salary employees. The unit salary plan is they will get paid only depending upon the number of units that they are producing or their number of units that they're working on. This is something additional that they will be getting as an allowance. There is a difference between that, and there is a difference between this, the salary plan and allowance plan. And allowances is different from bonus, correct? This is allowance. To my understanding, allowances are like by default you're performing or not as an employee of this organization, you are entitled for these allowances. Correct? Let's look into the amount based plan. This is simple and straightforward one. You can just list name is asked. You can mention here any FD that comes into pictures. Here competition element will be like, for example, car allowance. Because this is the separate one that we are using. Here I can define a specific amount like 200. But let's consider here I will define the eligibility rule. Like car allowances will not all the workers will not be eligible for car allowances. Like it will be only vice president, president or CEO or maybe a high level managers. Whichever group of people will be eligible, I will define the eligibility accordingly. Here like job level, it's a course like in whichever, like if there is any specific job profile, only that they are going to be eligible, we can define in that way as well. Because most of the organization, they have their job level, say like people at the higher management, like VP above or directors and above, they have a car allowances. We can go by the levels. Normally that is called as management level in voting. Now let's talk about, there is a car allowances plan and this company is located in multiple countries. And they want to give this car allowances to 2-3 countries that they are in. We are not supposed to create 3 separate plans of car allowances, like for car allowances for US, car allowances for Australia, car allowances for Canada, car allowances for Germany. That is not mandatory. We can do that in the same one. Like it took a create compensation plan, we can do it for the multiple countries. In a similar way, what I can do is I can click on the plus sign here. I will just remove the amount from here. I can remove the currency and I can keep this frequency as it is. And here I will define the amount. Let's take an example. I can use currency. I will here define the separate eligibility worker is from us. Worker is manager. And apart from that, I will add one more, wherein I will define. For example, let's put like this. Compared to Germany, Netherlands, the expenses of fuel is pretty inexpensive because of the car issues. I have euro. Both Netherlands and Germany has euros. But I wanted to give my Netherlands employee 150, but my German employees gets 300. Like double the size of the amount because of fuel expenses. In such cases, how we will put the currency here? It's simple and straightforward, right? Let's take an example. Let's talk about Netherlands. It's the Netherlands. It's 200 euro. I will define here the eligibility. That worker is from Netherlands. This is the amount of text. The system reads the eligibility rule and populates the data according. Here I will again define 400, again euro. And in the eligibility rule section, now I will create a new eligibility rule and I will define the worker as of Germany. Worker as this. Do you want to do that for me, please? Yes. How you do? I am mentioning workers of Germany and management. Level is manager. First of all, I will use the same field country. Any resolution. I will add the management level. Always choose the compensation, or else it will not work. All the options. Board of directors, CEO, managers, everything. I want to go with the manager. I will choose the manager. If, in case you want to define anything else as in the criteria, we can make. Can we just make one more as a criteria, like director? I just want. I wanted to give for managers and director. I will choose. I have an option to choose multiple right here. I will choose director. I will change the manager. We will update the name as manager and director. Once this is done, I will copy this criteria. I will update it here. Similarly, I will do one thing. I will create another rule. In Elizabeth rule, we have copy functionality as well. I will mention here. Neighborland. I will copy the same criteria that was there. That will automatically pop off here. It says fine. You can copy this. After it gets copied, you can remove this. Only I have to do this. I will change the country now because I want to give it to managers and director in the Netherlands as well. but here I will mention the country. Nice. You have both. And I will update this. That's it. What kind of ceremony will get 400? You work there of neither lands or manager and directors. They will get 200. This is how mainly we can create this. Now I get it. It is depending, as I said, like it is all depending on what you put into eligibility rule function. Like how you created, like for Netherlands and Germany separately. If we add those conditions, the system will auto-populate and it will apply this 11 CIS plan only for those employees who are like. For example, there are board of directors or directors in Germany. It will apply for 400 by default and 200 in the Netherlands. Now, when we create all these plans, right? Different plans like cartel. Now we have created. Now I want what I would visit if, in case anyone is being hired in Germany. This allowances plan should automatically become applicable to the country for them, for that specific worker at the time of journey. Whenever I'm defining the company, that should pop up automatically. Now that happens. For that, what we do is we create compensation package. Normally, this compensation package is different for different companies. Sorry, different countries. That's how mainly we segregate. We can segregate it based on the different companies as well. Let me do a bullet task to create compensation package. Now I'm just giving random dates. Let's take an example. I want to give this as a name as compensation package in Germany. I will define the eligibility rule because this compensation package is specifically for January. Right? We'll define here one single criteria is important that the worker should be of which location. It would be of Germany location. Apart from that, for Germany location, whatever compensation grades that we have, like whatever compensation grades that we have created, we'll add in over here. I'm just randomly adding whatever we have created. We can be standard using some other one. Normally, in this competition package, what we have to do is we have to listing all the grades, all the plans, each and every item over here. Whatever plans we have created, we will include it here. Normally. By this, what will happen is it will default automatically all the plans, not to everyone, only for those workers who have the right set of eligibility. This is how normally it defaults. Like for example, compensation grade. Compensation grade. Let's take an example. I have created a compensation grade of level L1 for different countries. Let's take an example. I have defined the criteria for Germany. For the Germany worker, whatever pay range will be, it will pop up automatically. Apart from that, for that specific Germany worker, whatever allowances plan, whatever salary plan, whatever would be there, it will default automatically to that specific worker. We do not have to go ahead and assign it manually. Related to compensation basis, we will discuss in the upcoming session. I will not get into that. For today's session, there was one thing. It was related to job profile. I wanted to show you job profile, like how all this gets linked at the job profile. Let me create one. Talking about the job profile, right? Tell me any name that you want. Let's say like an expert. Creating a job profile, you have to give a name. If in case there is a job code that you want to have for this specific job profile, you mention the code here. If in case I want to include this code name with the job profile name, I can use this checkbox and I can define the code here. Job title default. I will keep it as the same name. Apart from that, I have an option to restrict this job profile to any specific country as well. Let's take an example. I want to use this job profile only for Germany. I can mention here Germany. This job profile will be applicable only for Germany location, not for other. I have a question here. In our company, we have like various departments, like we have supervisory organizations, right? As per Workday. Let's say like we have sales, we have finance, risk management, and HR and other team members. We have something called cost utilization. Where we have particular code based on the cost center of the day. This is basically managed. You know the cost center, right? I was like, HR, you have a cost center code just like a job code. Can we also classify it using the cost center? Because we use that evidently here, because this is mainly for our workforce planning. When we do a comp budgeting for the annual, right, we go by the cost center. With respect to cost center, what do you want to classify here with respect to job profile that I'm not able to understand? Cost center is basically to in case of any of the annual compensation or allowances plan in the budgeting process or budgeting cycle, the finance team. We distribute the budget based on the cost centers, each of the departments involved. For example, say like the cost center, I decode for finances Zahlen 7 and for its Zahlen 6, right? For each of our centers, say like, and millions are allocated as their budget based on their skills and based on their forecast of how many we are going to like hiring forecast and the attrition forecast. Based on that, we'll just define how many is required based on the buffer count of futuristic employees as well. In terms of the job profile level, we do not have that option. Yesterday you're mentioning about a like job profile summary description. Any additional job description or job classification, right? We can update those respective information, right, at the job profile level only. We do not have to do it elsewhere. talking about management level, like here we were talking about, for example, board of directors, CEO, adjunct executive vice president, director, manager, supervisor, individual contributor. All these are the various management level that is available. Let's take an example. This expert SME is nothing but at a manager level or at whatever level we want to keep them, right? It's up to us. Let's assume I'm keeping them in the manager level, job level. If in case we have different job levels that is available and we want to keep this job profile at some specific job level, we can define it here. Job family. Job family is nothing but might be this expert or SME or like all the SMEs I want to keep in one category or in one job family. I can create one job family and I can link this job profile with respect to that. Similarly, we can do the categorization of the job profiles, right? This job, family and job category is mainly used to segregate one type of job profile. Just to give you an example, like if I talk about HR side, right? In HR side, there are multiple different group of workers, like for example, recruiter, right? Recruiting manager, right? There are, if I want to keep them, all of them in one job family, let's take an example in the HR side. We'll create one job family name as HR and I will include all the relevant job profiles in one that I will be well aware, like within one HR side. What are all the job profiles that I have? Because I will be linking that job family to all the respective job profiles. Did you get this? I get referral payment plan company insider type. If there are any such, these are the additional functionality that is available. If in case we want to use them, we can have it. Work shift required. There are different job profiles wherein it is required to work in multiple sets, right? In that scenario, we can use this checkbox inactive. Let's take an example. I have created this job profile, but after using it for some time, the company decided like we do not want to use this anymore. In Workday, we do not have an option to delete anything, if in case I have used it in the past. Instead of that, I have an option that I can inactivate that. This is that option. Talking about pay rate types, like for example, this job profile can be in the for multiple different countries wherein different period type is available. I can define it here. This is again characteristics. This is related to talent management. Like for example, difficulty to fill. There are different job profiles which are not easy to fill. Right? We can define like what is the level for filling this job. Like if I talk about vice president or CFO rules, they are not that easy to fill for any specific company. Normally we define the characteristics here because this mainly gets used in the succession planning. Let's take an example in my company. Currently I have a CFO and our company get to know he is going to leave the company. And you have someone who is taking care of the SVP level getting into that level. Correct. No, in succession planning, mainly what happens is normally when the company gets to know there is some scenario, like the employee will not be able to continue for upcoming time. What they do is they identify some of the company, some of the workers internally, and they try to get them to that level. The immediate next level of focus would be as SVP level of. For all those specific, like it's not mandatory to have this for all the job profiles, only wherein we feel like it's a necessary and we want to have that. We can use this functionality. Now coming to this compensation section, which was the important one. Compensation. Like normally, we have to define like this job profile comes under which compensation grade or date profile. This is how the compensation grade gets linked to the job profile. For example, I have linked this to some specific job compensation grade. Right. We will have and we will know like for this expert level, what is the pay range, right? Accordingly, we define that specific grade, competition grade, here that it gets linked here. That is all. Apart from that, these are related to other information that we want to fill in, right? Whether this job is job exempt or non-exempt, this is specific to United States. Our workers' compensation codes, if there are any competition related codes that we have with respect to different countries or location, we can mention that. If in case this job profile needs any certifications. What are the competencies? Education, languages. If there are any additional information that we want to fill in or update, right, we can have this. These are mainly for the talent management module that it is mainly used for. This is all about job profile and how the job profile gets mainly linked with the composition grade. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.